the Euro system. It's lost it. So therefore, what we have to think about is if you want to save civilization, you have to get rid of problems like Obama. You cannot have Obama, and you certainly don't want the other creeps or the Republican creeps. So the question is, we have to immediately. We're now faced with, as a planet, and a people of the planet, with the greatest threat to mankind which probably has ever existed. We are hovering at present, since the murder of the former president of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, we've been hovering ever since then on the verge of going into new wars, into Libya and into Iran. And the intent of those new wars was to trigger a larger war, which would become the launching of a thermonuclear war, featuring the assigned role of the United States under President Obama to launch a general thermonuclear war on Russia, China, and other nations. Such a war as understand that Russia would respond with thermonuclear response on the first instance of the evidence of such an assault upon it and China similarly, and other nations probably similarly. As long as this president, with his current intention, President Obama, continues in office, the threat of that warfare continues.
People, where countries that you put sanctions on, you are more likely to fight them. I say a policy of peace is free trade, stay out of their internal business, don't get involved in these wars, and just bring our troops home. We tolerated the Soviets. We didn't attack them, and they were a much greater danger. They were the greatest danger to us in our whole history. But you don't go to war against them. I mean, this whole idea of sanctions, all these pretend free traders, they're the ones who put on these trade sanctions. This is why we still don't have trade relationships with Cuba. It's about time we talk to Cuba and stop fighting these wars that are about 30 or 40 years old.
I have a few questions for my colleagues. What if our foreign policy of the past century is deeply flawed and has not served our national security interests? What if we wake up one day and realize that the terrorist threat is a predictable consequence of our meddling in the affairs of others and has nothing to do with us being free and prosperous? What if propping up repressive regimes in the Middle East endangers both the United States and Israel? What if occupying countries like Iraq and Afghanistan and bombing Pakistan is directly related to the hatred directed toward us? What if someday it dawns on us that losing over 5,000 American military personnel in the Middle East since 9/11 is not a fair trade-off for the loss of nearly 3,000 American citizens, no matter how many Iraqi, Pakistani, and Afghan people are killed? What if all wartime spending is paid for through the deceitful and evil process of inflating and borrowing? What if conservatives understood once again that their only logical position is to reject military intervention and managing an empire throughout the world? What if a military draft is being planned for the wars that will spread if our foreign policy is not changed? What if the American people learn the truth, that our foreign policy has nothing to do with national security, that it never changes from one administration to the next?
President of the Europe of Freedom and Democracy.
When we had a president, we'd see a giant global political figure. The man that would be the political leader for 500 million people. The man that would represent all of us on the world stage. The man whose job was so important that, of course, you're paid more than President Obama. Well, I'm afraid what we got was you. And I'm sorry, but after that performance earlier that you gave, and I don't want to be rude, but you know, really, you have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I would like to ask you, President, who voted for you? And what mechanism? Oh, I know democracy is not popular with you lot. And what mechanism do the peoples of Europe have to remove you? Is this European democracy? Well, I sense, though, that you're competent and capable and dangerous. And I have no doubt that it's your intention to be the quiet assassin of European democracy and of the European nation states. You appear to have a loathing for the very concept of the existence of nation states. But since you took over, we've seen Greece reduced to nothing more than a protectorate. Sir, you have no legitimacy in this job at all, and I can say with confidence that I can speak on behalf of the majority of the British people in saying, we don't know you, we don't want you, and the sooner you're put out to grass, the better.